Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That is my man, Jared Hall from the No Block, No Rock podcast, and I am Ravi Lulla. And you may notice here that we're not in different locations. Jared, how you doing this morning?
I am doing just swell, man.
I'm so glad I can hear you.
I know. You texted and you said I can hear the intro, I can hear the music. I told Shane, I'm just going into this thing assuming that your audio is going to cut out or something crazy is going to happen. I'm going into it assuming that's going to happen. So things can be positive from here on out, brother.
You know, I appreciate the preparedness that you have for that because I'm a paranoid person by nature. And so I basically prep the show every day as if the co-host, for whatever reason, is not going to be able to make it, you know?
Yeah, that's totally fair.
And
Life's crazy, you know.
It is, right? And, you know, speaking of life being crazy, you may notice I'm not at the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill right now. I'm live from Champaign, Illinois.
Champaign.
The pain, as they call it here locally.
Are you feeling the pain in Champaign?
Maybe only a little. Didn't have a ton of sleep last night. You know, had a long drive. So for you people that don't know, if you're heard at the end of the show yesterday, so I drove out here. One of my best friends' dads passed away, and so I came out for the funeral. And so I drove out yesterday after the show, kind of went to the services and everything. And originally my plan was to drive back overnight, basically get to Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill at like 6:30 in the morning without sleeping and doing the show that way. And I was like, you know what? I'm definitely going to die if I do that, first and foremost. And secondly, that's a terrible idea. So we decided, you know what, let's see if we can pull off a remote show from the hotel room. And so that's what we're doing. We're out here in Champaign, and so far, so good.
I'll just say, Ravi, you doing that, going out to Champaign, being there for your friend, going through a tough time, you're a pretty good dude, gotta say.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. He's my buddy Evan, which people on the show, actually, I talk about him sometimes. He's my Illinois guy. He's the reason I have a weird amount of knowledge and access to the Illinois program because he's like super plugged in. And he's actually called in to talk on the show before. So people that are you know, that are day one listeners have heard Evan before. He's one of the best people I know, and it's the absolute least I could do for him. And he didn't know, so it was me and my other friend from college, Josh, that came out to see him, and he didn't know we were coming. So we coordinated with his wife to let him know, to like figure out the details of everything. So I'll be honest, the look on his face when he saw us, because we basically just walked into it was like a celebration of life service.
Okay.
So it wasn't at a church or anything. It was at this local kind of like pizza. It like think of like a Dave and Buster's kind of, but it's like a multi-level and like more adult.
Okay.
Adult in the sense of like there's gambling, not that there's strippers. And
listen, I mean, look.
I mean, what better way to celebrate life?
People grieve or celebrate differently. That sounds like a great time, actually.
But yeah, so he didn't know we were coming till we kind of went up to the receiving line and he saw us there. And I'll be honest, the look on his face was worth every second of the 14 hours I will have spent in the car over the last like 36 hours. So I'm super glad I was able to come out for it.
Driving over the city limits of Champaign, and you just feel this like, ugh. Here we go. I'm in Champaign, Illinois. But being there for your friend. But I do have to ask you, are you going to be here in time for the Creed concert on Saturday?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Like that's
Sky Blue.
That is a non-negotiable. So it's funny you asked that actually, because I was talking to Evan last night. He's like, what time do you guys need to be home? And as I mentioned, my friend Josh came with me, and he's got kids and everything. I don't, thank God. But he's like, I'd kind of like to be back before it's too late tonight, maybe be there for kids' bedtime, like around 9 or whatever. And I was like, as long as I'm back by 8:00 on Saturday for Creed, I'm game for anything, bud. Like, we can do anything we want.
Wide open.
So I will say, speaking of my buddy Josh, if you do hear noises in the background, he is in the room. So like, it's not a taken situation. I'm not in danger. Like he's here. He's a champ. I kind of woke him up. I was like, hey, bud, it's like 6:50. I'm gonna have to go on the air here in a minute. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So appreciate him. But yeah, if you hear any background noises, I don't need you to find anyone and kill them. It's just Josh in the background.
You're not being held hostage. I will ask. So he's awake right now?
Yeah, I think he's in the shower.
Oh, well, hey, what better place, really? Tell him to do his best Scott Stapp impression. That's what I want to hear.
He
actually hear your Scott Stapp impression. That's what I want to hear.
He actually is a big Creed fan also. So it's I kind of surround myself, like me, Josh, Evan, we're all big Creed fans. So we went back to his mom's house last night after the services and everything, and we did rock a little Creed. I'm not gonna lie to you. There was some Creed to be had.
Okay, let's kind of go down this Creed rabbit hole, shall we?
Absolutely, I would love to,
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't want to take over your show. I know we're talking about Creed, like your literal favorite thing in the whole world.
Not my literal favorite thing. Like I like dogs and my wife, but the Creed's up there.
Creed, dogs, Scott Stapp. I will say, when I was like 12,
mm-hmm.
I would have called myself a huge Creed fan. And not because of My Sacrifice, not because of Arms Wide Open. It was because of their debut album, My Own Prison.
Oh, people sleep on My Own Prison. That's a good album.
Here's the thing about that, too, is that's overlooked by all the mainstream
mm-hmm.
huge hits, right? They got a little soft with
My
Sacrifice. When we talk about My Own Prison, man,
it goes hard.
I'm just saying.
It goes hard.
Like, people give Creed a lot of crap because, Pearl Jam knockoffs. Am I listening to Eddie Vedder on crack, I guess?
Eddie Vedder wishes he could be Scott Stapp.
I don't know about that, but no, but like when I was like 12, when I was like a kind of a chubby, depressed 12-year-old kid, Scott Stapp was my dude.
Listen, it's I think people, I don't know if people think it's a bit, like, or but like I unironically really love Creed.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that they're the Beatles or anything. Like, I get what they are. I do. I don't think they're as bad as people think they are. Like, I think they've kind of become like a lesser Nickelback in the sense of like, people just like making them a punchline. But I unironically love Creed. Like, this is not a bit. I am going to the concert tomorrow. Like, I love their music. And I'll honestly, you go My Own Prison. People forget there was an album after they were popular called Full Circle when they like reunited in like 2009.
I went to that reunion concert in 2009, by the way.
I did too. I was at Mid-America Center for the Full Circle concert and I loved it. Like, I am unabashedly a legitimate Creed fan. And listen, you can hate on me if you want. I don't care. I like what I like, and Creed is one of the things that I like. And I'm genuinely pumped. Like, I was going, before they put the Stir Cove concert on there, I was going to travel to go see them at one of their other concerts. Like, I was either going to go to Chicago or they added a Kansas City in November, and I was like, oh, that seems like a good spot for me. I was going to go regardless.
Yeah, this is not a bit. Holy crap, you're all in.
Oh, I'm in deep. Now,
here's the thing. They're playing at Stir,
yep,
outdoors. Now, if you look at the forecast,
don't do this to me, Jared. Don't do it.
But here's where I'm going to make it a positive.
Okay.
Assuming there's no lightning strikes, is there like it's 7 miles away, we have to cancel the show? Is there like a protocol like they do with baseball?
I don't know. I don't know what Big Ten protocol is on Creed concerts. I'm really hoping the Lord and the weather cooperate for me.
But what if it rains just enough? Do you know what I mean?
Like just that perfect amount of like great atmosphere concert rain.
Like Scott Stapp during the encore, they're playing with arms wide open because that's what they do. They play the huge hits. They play the
which
bass.
I love, by the way. Like, don't be that band that's like, oh, we don't play our hits. We're going to play Chinese Democracy. No, you play the hits. That's what people are there for. And listen, I'm there for, it's funny you mentioned Rain off that Full Circle album. There is an absolute banger called Rain. Right. Can you just imagine being out there at Stir, experiencing nature in all of its glory with your arms wide open, and they start playing Rain from the Full Circle album? Like, that will go hard.
That would come full circle.
Oh, I see what you did there.
The drive was worth it. Scott Stapp going, oh, yeah, all in my ear.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm pumped. I'm genuinely excited. And
yeah.
For people people ask this a lot. I am a big My Sacrifice guy. Love that song. Will says if they started ripping higher during a thunderstorm, that'd be amazing. Yeah, I'm all on board. I'm in, Will. Like, say less. I am in.
I'm just saying. Use the weather to your advantage.
I do. Yeah, use it for the atmosphere, man. Yeah. I think One Last Breath is my favorite Creed song.
Okay.
I don't know if people aren't familiar, go look it up. It's slept on a little bit, but dear God, that thing goes hard.
All right. If I had to pick a favorite Creed song, it would have to be off of the debut, My Own Prison album.
Okay.
Underrated deep cut.
Okay.
Sister.
Ooh, I'm not sure the last time I heard that song.
Just if you could, Ravi, yeah. in your downtime, just listen.
Look-see.
And it's got a great chorus. It's just good. It's good songwriting, and when you listen to like My Sacrifice and all that, it really does make you kind of appreciate that kind of grittier side to them that they used to have.
Oh yeah.
So, Sister off of the debut. It's like the second to the last song.
We're gonna add it to the road trip home playlist. Is what we're gonna do.
Scott Stapp goes hard in that song.
There is like My Own Prison is like a grittier, like harder rock version of Creed. And I do appreciate the range because you've got everything from like the My Own Prison album to With Arms Wide Open. Like there's some versatility there. I'm here for the Creed.
Let's give also Mark Tremonti his flowers.
Oh, one of the best guitarists in the world.
People might be like, he's attached to Scott Stapp's like ball and chain, right? Like you're attached to Scott Stapp, like the Creed, the whole hating on them has kind of damaged.
It's become a meme almost.
Yeah, and people will say like, yeah, Creed sucks, but Mark Tremonti is a legit guitarist, which is true. He's very, very good.
He is. He's incredible. And here's the thing that I'll tell you, right? Musicians like other good musicians. So if you're Mark Tremonti and you've had other options, you've done Alter Bridge, you've done other projects that people like a lot, but he continues to work with Scott Stapp, what does that tell you about Scott Stapp? Right? That's all I'm saying.
He's an excellent human being.
Apparently, well, I don't know about excellent human being. He's had some struggles, but I think he's doing better now. I do. I think he's doing better now.
Hey, sometimes you use those personal demons for
in the music.
Artistic.
Put it in the music.
That's right.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Will chimes in and says One Last Breath has 335 million listens on Spotify. Will, how many does like Higher have though? I need context here because that is a ton of listens. I need context.
And that's a song that came out in 2000.
2001, I think. It's either, I can't remember if it's on Human Clay in 99 or on Weathered in 2001. Yeah. But either it's in that range.
It sounds like One Last Breath is one of those songs they make you listen to, if it has that many. I'm just saying.
What do you mean they make you listen to?
They just put it in a playlist?
It's like random? You just turn it on and it's just there.
This isn't like the YouTube album that everybody got downloaded onto their iPhones, man. Like, come on.
Wait, Shane, are you telling me...
He's a hater, Shane.
That's totally on me.
Are you telling me people don't go into their Spotify and type in One Last Breath? Is that what you're telling me?
Apparently 335 million listeners have. I believe Will. I mean, I'm sure he's on it. I mean, he's probably on it, but I'm just saying maybe it's one of those ones that they just make you listen to.
It's I think 334 million of those listens might be me. Actually, that's not true. I'm an Apple Music guy, so none of those are me. So I'm not even juicing the numbers on Spotify here.
You're not trying to up the numbers. I've probably listened to it probably 3 times maybe.
Will says it's off the Weathered soundtrack, or off the Weathered album. Thank you, Will. I think Will might be like a closet Creed fan. We love this from Will this morning.
Either he's a Creed diehard like you, or he's just very good at using Google.
He might just be a Google machine expert, though, which is totally fine. He is a Creed fan. Let's go, Will.
Yeah, Will's probably going to kill me for saying that. I'm sorry, Will. I don't mean it.
He's not. He says not even closeted. We love that for you, Will. Yeah, everybody let their Creed flag fly. You know what I mean? Just let it fly.
We're talking about Creed, and then last night, not to get all political on you, but
you do you.
You got Kid Rock out there at the RNC. Like, is it 1999 again? I'm watching. This is America. We're going back to 99, I guess. Ball with the ball.
I'm not a huge Kid Rock fan, but 99 was the best Kid Rock era for sure.
Oh yeah. I am the bull god. Like I don't even know what that I don't even know what that means. But I know what that means when
Nobody knows what it means. It's provocative. Gets the people going. I will say you brought up I was at one concert when it was raining, like you're talking about, and it was an incredible experience.
Do you mind if you say who it was?
Oh, I will. It's very different from Creed.
Okay.
It was a Ben Folds concert.
Ben Folds.
Who I love.
Brick.
Yes, it was in Kansas City at an amphitheater in Kansas City. Rufus Wainwright opened for him of Shrek cover of Hallelujah fame.
As does.
It was, and so the coolest part, so Ben Folds has a cover of Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. And of course, and it's like a deep cut. Like it doesn't exist on an album or anywhere. And he plays it during this like rainstorm in Kansas City, and the place lost their minds.
Meant to be.
Oh yeah. And then you've got
you'll probably song tomorrow night.
By Raindrops Falling on My Head by Creed?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Scott Stapp can pull it off, but I won't put anything past him. I don't know if I won't put anything past him.
Wait, you don't think he can do it?
I said I won't put anything past him. I can't. It would be a totally different version than the Ben Folds version. That's all I'll say.
There you go.
I will say, if you've never been to a Ben Folds concert, he does them with like symphonies and stuff now, so they're not as like rock show concert deals, you know. But he has this song called Army, which don't listen with your kids. There's a lot of swear words. But
I don't have kids.
Thank God.
Hey.
But there's this instrumental, like this big orchestral instrumental in this song Army. And he basically has the audience do that part. He'll like point to half the audience and he'll be like, you guys hum this. He points to the other half of the audience and you guys do that. And it's like it's an electric atmosphere. Like it's actually really, really cool.
And I'm not gonna lie, when you say Ben Folds, I'm not exactly thinking electric live show.
I know.
You know what I mean?
He's got some more upbeat stuff, though. People know him for Brick, but there's some stuff that goes like a little bit like boppier than that. He had like a pop music era a little bit, and it's very good. Like I would highly recommend a Ben Folds show.
Usually the word bop is reserved for Doja Cat.
Miley.
Or a banger. Not necessarily a Ben Folds song.
Go listen to Army. You'll know exactly what I mean.
I don't mean to hate. Like I'm more ignorant than anything. Like you said.
Listen to Rock in the Suburbs and Army, and you will know exactly what I mean.
And I'll want to go to a Ben Folds concert with you in the rain.
In Kansas City. Yeah, I think I've been to 3 Ben Folds concerts. They're a good time.
Are you guys going?
Are you guys going? I will say.
Yeah, what's up?
It's been a while since I've been to a concert.
Like Stained?
It's been a while. I'm a huge fan of the smaller venues.
Sure, yeah.
I get after it. Like
in what sense?
For most shows that I go to, they are like moshy.
Okay.
I'm talking some like heavy metal kind of like if you listen to it in your car, like really loud, people are going to think you're kind of demented.
Sure.
And if I'm going to a concert, I want a small venue. I'm not trying to like hurt people or anything, but
you want to feel it a little bit.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to unleash some, either it's like some inner demons or like just some deep seated sadness that I have inside that I'm trying to get out, but I'm trying to mosh. I'm trying to sweat. I'm trying to make it a thing.
Yeah.
You know what? An experience.
100%.
It can get a little too out of hand where I don't even really remember the next day. And I don't need.
That's called a concussion.
It's called just taking part in libations. If you will. We're on live radio. I'm not trying to get too nutty with it, but I get after it, my friend.
We will set up the show coming up next here in just a minute. A lot of guests here today. We got a lot to get to. We're talking a lot of college football. That is Jared Hall. I'm Ravi Lulla. This is Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That is Jared Hall, who is live at the Pillar Exterior stage. I'm Ravi Lulla, who is live at a hotel room in Champaign, Illinois, but we still have Pillar Exteriors in our hearts. So we appreciate our friends over there. Jared, I'm going to get the lineup out here real quick. We have a couple guests today. Starting off at 7:43, we've got Scott Dochterman. He covers Iowa for The Athletic as we continue to preview we're going to preview all the teams on Nebraska's schedule, but Iowa's up next. I want to do this in reverse order so that we land on UTEP on game week. So, we're starting at the end. We started at the end. Now we're here. Coming up at 8, we've got Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. There's been some Cruton news. No mitts yet, but there is some Cruton news.
No mitts, no Romneys yet.
Coming up at 9, we'll talk to Mike Sautter, our very own guy from Hurrdat Sports. We'll see. He's been up in North Dakota, I think, all week covering wrestling.
Yeah, he's been a traveling man. I don't know where he's been exactly. Who knows where Sautter is, dude? Does Sautter know where Sauter's at?
Some days I don't know, but he was definitely in one of the Dakotas for a wrestling event. I don't remember which one. I think it was North. I think I saw a picture of him at the Fargo Dome.
He was in one of the DACs. We just don't know if it's no or so.
Or Prescott. We don't know. Coming up at 9:30, we'll talk to Damon Benning, who will return on Monday. He's been at team camp for Westside all week. And then, as we always do on Friday, we'll wrap up the show with the one and only Maddie Vrzal, our friend from Paisan's Pizzeria. But got a lot going on today, Jared. A lot going on.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And I think the main thing is people just want to hear Husker football content for the most part, right?
Yeah, I'm like in full-fledged college football mode now. Like I don't know if it was the All-Star game or like Wimbledon ending, but like I turned a corner sometime in the last week and I'm like, all right, baby, I don't know if we got Big Ten Media Days coming up, but like I am full on in college football mode now. I'm ready to go.
Sorry, I just had to throw my W's up because Thomas said
for the Wu-Tang
Clan. Here's the thing about the Wu-Tang Clan. If you go to one of their concerts, you can never get all 30 members on one stage at the same time because of beefing. And so I have seen like 5 of them separately. So there's that. There's that tangent. Non-Nebraska tangent.
Wasn't really the Wu-Tang Clan so much as it was like a Wu-Tang like sect.
We could say they were like Shogun, like, you know, the lone. I think
Wu-Tang
that
solo.
They themselves.
Yeah.
Lone Samurai. So
I think it was the Last Samurai.
Tom Cruise. Yeah. Hey, that's some good casting right there.
Yeah, he looks like a samurai.
Tom Cruise does his own stunts, baby. Okay, sorry.
Just throw a top knot on there. He'll pass. Travis says Wu-Tang Click. That makes sense. Yeah, a little smaller version of the clan.
There we go.
that'll work. No, I'm starting to. You know, I was talking yesterday. I've started to rewatch some of the games from last season.
Okay.
You know, and I'll be honest. I think I had repressed some of the things that happened.
Yeah, it's easy to want to try to forget some of the things, and when it pops back up, it's like, oh yeah, I was really mad about that.
It's almost just like befuddling watching this team from last year. And I'll be honest, I don't know how they won any games.
Because of their offense or what?
Because of how mistake prone they were on offense specifically, right? So I watched Wednesday night, and I talked about this a little bit with Elijah on yesterday. Yep, yesterday. And so I watched Northwestern and Purdue because I was like, I want to watch a couple wins. All right, let's get some W's.
Purdue, huh? Ooh, that one was.
Well, so Nebraska's up 24-0 in that game. And you'd be like, oh, man, that must have been a pretty clean game. No, they lost the opening kickoff.
The first touch of the football.
And I had forgotten that. And then they had another turnover like almost immediately. I don't know if it was the next possession or the one after that. But so I'm watching that game. I'm like, oh, man, opening kickoff. Like, that's rough. And then I watch Northwestern, and they throw a pick on the first play of the game.
Throwing into a 30-mile-an-hour wind when the narrative going into that game, Ravi, was they cannot stop the run. So this quarterback that you have who is not great at throwing, I just remember in the stands that day going, okay, it's literally 30-mile-an-hour winds. Northwestern cannot stop the run. Why is that the first play?
Air it out, baby. Air it out.
A fan coach. Anyway. There.
Well, you have the headset on, so you kind of look like you could be an OC.
You're mad.
I am better than Satterfield.
But those are the first 2 plays of those games, like respectively. And I watched the first one, and I'm like, oh yeah, phlegm on kickoff. That's rough. And then I start watching the next one after the other bevy of errors that are in the Purdue game. I start watching Northwestern. I was like, dear God, they had turnovers to start both of those games. And then you've got Alex Bullock like muffin punts, and you've got fumbles all the time. And I'm just like, how did they win any games?
I will say that Purdue game, you rewatched it. What's the one moment in that game that everybody is going to remember forever about that game? What do you think? Forever. Like you think of Purdue. Or what do you think? What play that happened? And I can just tell you if you don't know.
So there was a.
And I mean good play. I should say a good play.
Okay, yeah. So I went positive on this. I'm very positive, as many people know. Not cynical or a skeptic at all. And I remember there was a long throw to Jalen Lloyd that was really good. That ended up being a touchdown. There was a long pass to Malachi Coleman that people were very excited about.
I'm sorry. I posed this question thinking it was going to be.
I think there's one more. Was it the Quentin Newsome return?
That's the one.
Which is incredible play. Great play.
And that's one of those plays that happens. And for one, I mean, you're thankful for special teams, especially in that game, Ravi. If you think about it, you got 7 off of that. And you got a 55-yarder
from our guy Tristan Alvano.
Special teams came up big that day. And so, Ravi, DB likes to talk about Iowa. Remember how Iowa's offense was literally the worst last year? How did they win 10 games? Their defense, and Phil Parker is a freaking sage, and their special teams. And so when you have Tristan Alvano kicking a 55-yarder and you have a punt return taken back for a touchdown, that's 10 points, boom, right there.
It was actually a blocked field goal return.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Blocked field goal.
Yeah, it was. I believe Elijah Judy blocked the field goal, and then it was cool because Newsome caught it out of midair.
Yeah,
and then just ran, which was it was super cool.
And the dudes are pointing at each other, running.
No, they did a high five. Him and Tommy Hill did a high five on the way in.
You did rewatch the game. I'm going based off of last.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I literally watched this less than 48 hours ago. The fact that you remembered as much as you did is incredible. Because I wouldn't have remembered most of that stuff. I don't know. I'd forgotten so much of those games, and I don't know if I had tried to block it out because of the trauma of what the offense looked like. But I'm going to make an argument. We're going to talk to Scott Dochterman here in a minute about Iowa, but I may make an argument to you that Nebraska's offense worse than Iowa's last year.
Okay.
Can I make that argument?
I think you could definitely. I mean, you think of Deacon Hill, big boy, Deacon Hill.
I'll explain in a little bit, but we're going to talk to our guy Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, preview the Iowa Hawkeyes, a team that, despite my dislike for them, I am very high on their prospects this season. I think they're going to have. Man, I've looked at that schedule and I was like, dear God, it's like they never left the Big Ten West. So they always talk. They do. We will talk to Scott Dochterman from The Athletic coming up next. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That is Jared Hall. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. We are joined now by Scott Dochterman of The Athletic, covering Iowa. Scott, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing very well. And, we're just starting to preview all the teams on Nebraska's schedule. And, I feel a little weird, Scott, because, obviously as a Nebraska guy, not a huge fan of the Hawkeyes, but I am very high on their prospects this season. I look at their schedule and I look at the fact that they can't possibly be any worse on offense. And I go, how does this team not just automatically win 9 or 10 games?
I think that unless some bad luck affects them, I think that that's probably about the bottom line. I mean, this is a year that it's playoff or bust for the Hawkeyes. They have some fortune, and when it comes to their scheduling, no question. I mean, they're playing Washington this year and not last year. They're going to UCLA. That's different than playing, obviously, Oregon or USC. They're playing Michigan State, not the Michigan State we saw a few years ago. And then some of the games that might be closer to 50-50 matchups, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa State, are in Iowa City. So outside of a trip to Columbus, you look at the schedule and you think with still an elite level defense and an offense, as you said, that can't be worse. I don't know how. I mean, they would ever be worse than what they were last year. Then I think that this team has a chance to, put itself strongly in playoff consideration.
Now, Scott, you had just said that you cannot imagine how the Iowa offense could get any worse. I will throw it over to Ravi because I think Ravi wanted to make an argument that Nebraska's offense was actually worse. I'll just throw it over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, I mean, so Scott, obviously there was a lack of effectiveness from the Iowa offense, but it didn't seem like they actively put the rest of the team in positions to lose, right? There wasn't like Nebraska was hampered by turnovers and untimely mistakes and things like that. I think the one thing you can say pretty much about every Kirk Ferentz team, and even last year with how bad the offense was, is that there was still some coherence between what the offense, defense, and special teams were trying to do, and they didn't actively shoot themselves in the foot as much as, like, say, Nebraska did. Is that a fair take on how Iowa's offense was, even considering how ineffective it was?
To some extent. Once Deacon Hill got in there, it was sabotage city. Now they had an outstanding punter, a very good kicker until the very end of the season, and obviously an outstanding defense. The game plan, once injuries just destroyed them, was try not to make any mistakes and you might as well punt it on first down. But when Deacon Hill got in there, I mean, he had 8 interceptions. He had 11 fumbles. 6 of them were recovered by the opponent. He single-handedly lost games against Minnesota. You can make a strong case that the Michigan game would have been much more competitive had he not fumbled twice inside his own 10-yard line that led to touchdowns. Actually 10 points, not touchdowns. So this was the one year last year, because of the way the quarterback played, where Iowa put itself in a real bad position offensively. Whereas when Spencer Petras was there before he got hurt against Nebraska in 2022, only once or twice did I see them really implode offensively. But that said, I mean, we're splitting hairs. I mean, statistically, when it came to total offense, it was the worst offense in the Big Ten since 1984, which was Northwestern, which was a glorified Ivy League team then. And it just, when you average 15 points a game and 31 yards per game, it's an eyesore, and nobody wants to watch that. I mean, I'd rather watch soccer with an American football mindset than watch that kind of offense again.
We're talking with Scott Dochterman of the Athletic covering Iowa. So let's talk about Cade McNamara, right? So this is obviously a guy that led Michigan to the college football playoff a couple years ago. And I don't know that anybody looks at him as a world beater, but what does he need to be? Is it simply just not being Deacon Hill, or is there a level, you say it's playoff or bust? What does Cade McNamara have to be in order for that to work?
He has to be much better than Deacon. He's got to be better than he was himself before he suffered his ACL. He wasn't real good, but he was hurt too, even before the ACL. I mean, in Iowa offense, you don't want to just merely win games the way they won in the last couple of years, which is just, prevent losses. I mean, I think in his case, he needs to complete somewhere around 62% of his passes. And if not higher than that, he had 64% when he was in Michigan. I think he's got to convert on third down. He's got to convert in the red zone. Iowa used to be pretty good at that, and they've been really bad at that lately. You want a quarterback who's a little bit better than a game manager. And I'm not saying Cade McNamara could be much more than that. I don't see him being an NFL caliber quarterback or anything, but I think he's somebody who can be efficient and make plays when they're available. And in Tim Lester's new offense, that should provide some improvements for the Hawkeyes. I mean, when you look at more motion, it did provide some more breaking plays in the spring against a really good defense because it caused some problems with run fits. and probably more quick passing, which something that Iowa strangely has not really tried to do for a long time. So I think his skill set will be better served in what Tim Lester wants from him on this offense, and I do think that he has a chance to make plays rather than just be a game manager or a caretaker.
Yeah, you had mentioned Tim Lester, and I think a lot of people, Husker fans especially, just because we're a little, jaded over here, like we see the Tim Lester hire, and we're just like, he's a Kirk Ferentz puppet. He's just going to do what Kirk wants him to do. And then so I was going to ask you to just kind of go into the Tim Lester effect. Like, I know that you had just written that there's a new look offense for Iowa, and you had mentioned motion. Is there just anything else that you'd like to add to that point about this new look offense under Tim Lester?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that, when he was the head coach of Western Michigan, had 3 top 25 offenses in the country. And a lot of what they're trying to do is, not only get the ball out of his hands a little bit faster and use more motion to disrupt the second and third levels in their run fits, but also hit passes down the field. So all of which Iowa has not done in a long time. This isn't necessarily there was more involvement from the athletic director when it came to this hire. It was obviously highly scrutinized. There were some question marks early on as to whether or not he was the best hire or not. And I think Paul Christ would have been, which is who he really sought early on, would have been more in the same vein as the Kirk Ferentz thought process. But this one is different than some of his past hires, where the verbiage is all Tim Lester's. There's really no combination of that in a Kirk Ferentz offense. The play calling, the schematics are all Tim Lester. The difference is, and this is all a mere one difference, is that they'll still keep the same blocking fundamentals that they've always had under Kirk Ferentz, but that's something that's non-negotiable, and it's understandable. I mean, he's been known to be a great offensive line coach, and they've struggled there a little bit there when they've had some both injuries and departures, but by and large, that's a sound philosophy. So he's not a puppet by any stretch, but they are going to remain complementary in how they compete, because that wins games, and so that's what they're kind of looking for.
Scott, got about a minute left here with you. I'd be remiss if we didn't ask something about the defense, which I think most of us just take for granted as a given. Obviously, you lose Cooper DeJean, but a lot of other guys came back, especially guys that could have had NFL futures. I mean, is it just, hey, we pencil him in for a top 20 defense for the 11th year in a row and don't worry about it?
Yeah. I mean, last year they were number 1 in the country in yards per play allowed, and they had almost 200 more snaps to the number 2 team. And they returned all but 3 starters from this unit. Cooper DeJean, as you said, but Logan Lee was a good player, and Joe Evans was a real try-hard guy. Went from being a walk-on to end up with 28 sacks in his career. So they've got some guys to replace, but when you're bringing back everybody in your back 7 but 1, and you're bringing back 6 out of your rotational guys up front, they feel pretty good, and I think that they deserve to feel pretty good about what they have. And so barring any kind of catastrophic injuries, this team, that it's going to be defense first. It's going to be a unit that we'll keep it competitive, and probably every game. The Ohio State game is obviously a little bit more of a question, but I think overall that they're in a pretty good position to compete.
That's Scott Dochterman from The Athletic covering Iowa. Scott, we appreciate your time as always, and I'm sure as we get closer and into the season, we will catch up with you again soon. Thank you, Scott.
Have a good day, guys. Thank you.
That's Scott Dochterman with The Athletic. Coming up next, we've got Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. There's some Cruton news we got to get to. That's Jared. I'm Ravi. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That is Jared Hall from the No Block, No Rock podcast. I'm Ravi Lulla. and we are live, at least in our hearts, from the Pillar Exterior stage. We're joined now by Tim Verghese of Inside Nebraska to talk a little Huskers and recruiting. Tim, how are you this morning?
Hello. Not too bad. How about y'all?
Doing all right.
We're doing pretty good, Tim. We're about to head into the weekend. You know, we're already an hour through the show. We're feeling good. We're doing all right. There's a little bit of recruiting news in the last couple days. No commitments necessarily, but I gotta start with something it's a little pet peeve of mine, if I'm being honest. Jackson Cantwell came out with a top 14 that includes Nebraska. And I get it's a big deal that Nebraska's still in this recruitment and they, that's exciting for them. I struggle with the top 14s, Tim. Like, that doesn't mean a lot to me. Could we get it into single digits before we start releasing lists? Is that an unreasonable ask?
I completely agree. In this instance specifically, I remember I talked to Jackson last month just to catch up with him, kind of see where things were at. And he mentioned like, hey, once my recruitment blew up the way it is pretty much just down to a dozen or so schools. And I was like, okay, so like, what are those schools? And he started listing off some names and some of the names that are obviously in that top 14. But talking to him about it, and it just, for him specifically, this is more of just like an exercise for him and his family and everybody to just kind of, hey, this is what we're whittling the list. This is who we're focusing on moving forward. And like, yeah, I get it. Like a top 14 is a little crazy, but there's a kid with 30 plus offers, like cutting that list pretty much in half.
Is it more about, for a guy like that, to kind of let the other schools know, like, hey, I don't want you to have to try and like keep wasting your time. Like, we're not really considering you anymore, and just kind of like publicly getting that out there. Like, is that part of what these lists are?
Yes, absolutely. For some of these guys, especially a kid like Cantwell, and you talk to some of these guys that are highly recruited in the way some of these top 5 stars are, they get real sick of the process by their junior, senior year, especially a guy like Cantwell who's been recruited as long as he has. They get real sick of it. They just want, like, again, we're focusing on this many schools. We only want to hear from these many schools. We don't really want to hear from you've had your chance. You gave it your best shot. You're not in it anymore type. But that's kind of how it is with a lot of these guys. Even those top 5s, top whatever, like those, when they drop lists, I remember talking to like coaches and parents of recruits, and they're like, we cut the list down in hopes that, this would quiet things down around the recruitment. Usually it doesn't. Schools are still going to reach out, but at the same time, it does give them that warning of just like, hey, you're not in consideration anymore. Like, don't waste your time.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of people, they look at recruiting and they go, kids these days, they love to be recruited. They love to be courted. So then when I hear you say, no, actually, like, especially for the kids at the top, right? They're hearing from everybody. And so, yeah, I can imagine by the end of your junior year, you're like, bruh, can we just get this thing? I just want to focus on football now.
Right. Yeah, it's exactly that. Obviously there are kids that fall in love with the process itself more than actual, football or actual like trying to make a good decision. There are those type of kids, but for the most part, it's like you're saying, especially those guys at the top, they do get real sick of that process, especially by the end. Like, they're all just ready to have it done with. I think that's why you're seeing, especially now in these last couple of cycles and moving forward, you're going to see a lot more decisions come in the summer where guys are just like, once it's done, I'm shutting things down. I'm just focusing on the season. A lot of Nebraska's current commits are that way. They're not open to any other schools right now. They're not even listening to the recruiting side of things. They're locked in with Nebraska. That's the way it is across the country right now. A lot of these guys are pretty locked in with where they're at. There's going to be some flips down the stretch. That's just always how it is. But for the most part, the ones that are committed now, it's because it's like, hey, we're pretty done with the process.
So let me ask about Jackson Cantwell specifically. Obviously, Nebraska makes the top 14. How would you handicap Nebraska's chances? Like, I don't know. You don't have to like rank them within the 14, but do you think there's a legitimate opportunity there for Nebraska?
Yes, I do. He's visited campus a couple times already. Nebraska is one of the few schools that he's done that. Maybe one of the only schools. I think Missouri and I believe Georgia are the only other two schools that have gotten him on campus more than once so far. And I asked him, I was like, why do you keep why Nebraska? Like, what about Nebraska has you stopping by? Because it's just relatively short drive, but like where he's at, Nixa, Missouri, that's like 5-6 hours from Lincoln. Like, it's not necessarily an easy drive, It's not like getting to Columbia, which is 2-3 hours for him. So I asked him about it, and he's like, my relationships with the coaching staff there are really strong and some of the best I have in this recruitment. Like, and that's not just, it's Matt Rule, it's Donovan Raiola, it's Keith Williams, it's some recruiting staffers, but Keith Williams specifically has been big here, as have, obviously Rule and Raiola. So it's relationships here. He wants to do both sports. He's obviously in Olympic level. Like he's a son of two Olympians. He's the junior record holder or sophomore record holder in the shot put, high school overall record holder, I believe, in shot put as well right now. And so he wants to throw at the next level. And Nebraska's shown you can do both sports here and have success, and we know how to maintain your schedule, and we know what we're doing. Like, they've already gotten him in some of those meetings and already like, hey, go talk to Jalen Lloyd, go talk to Jeremiah Charles, see how they enjoy doing both sports here. Like, we have a plan for you if you want to do both here, which a lot of schools, like, they don't even have that plan. Like, they can't even point to examples, and Nebraska has multiple on campus already.
Speaking of guys that Nebraska might have a very good chance with, and excuse me if I butcher the name, Cade Peterzak?
Yes, Peterzak, yes.
So 6'5", 240, out of defensive lineman out of North Dakota. Oklahoma lean, it looked like, for a little bit there. But go into Cade Peterzak's recruitment and like where Nebraska stands with him right now.
Yeah, this one's been a really interesting one to follow. Cade doesn't talk a lot, if at all. I don't think he's done an interview on the record yet. And it's been pretty difficult to kind of get a read on that recruitment. Like, primarily my sourcing has been from other staffs and kind of talking to people kind of that are in the know about his recruitment. But like, it's been hard to get anything out of him directly. That being said, this is one that has swung in Nebraska's direction over the last few days or so. Yesterday I got a couple texts from a couple different staffs being like, hey, this is all of a sudden looking like it's going to be Nebraska. And which is interesting because going into June and even coming out of June, through those official visits, so basically going to June official visit period, we had heard he had tried to commit to Oklahoma, but then Oklahoma was like, hey, we have a no visit policy. You wouldn't be allowed to visit anywhere else. So he was like, let me go take my visits. I want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence here, but I'm coming. Like, he told Oklahoma, I'm coming. And did a visit OV to Wisconsin, went to Oklahoma, then Nebraska, then Kansas State. So Nebraska was sandwiched right between Oklahoma and Kansas State. And coming out of the Oklahoma visit, I heard the same thing, just like he felt at home. It felt like this was going to be the place. Nebraska went well, is the way it was put to me, but wasn't really expanded on beyond that. But then coming out of that Kansas State visit, they were like, hey, this is going to be a Kansas State and Oklahoma recruitment down the stretch. Like, Kansas State has made this thing interesting. And now we're sitting here, and Nebraska's the one that has the momentum, which Nebraska hasn't had the momentum in here in a couple of months. Like, it's been since like April or so since I've heard concrete like momentum for Nebraska here, which is a testament to Rule and Raiola, their effort here, kind of maintaining, like, this is a dead period. Like, Nebraska somehow made up their ground in a dead period. The kid didn't come back on campus. They didn't go out and visit him. They weren't able to do that, of course. So this is just pure communication. Part of it is him sitting down and evaluating these 4 options that he made official visits to. And, the combination of all those different things, we're now sitting here on Friday, July 19th, heading into the weekend. And it's like, hey, Nebraska's trending in this recruitment and could get him to pop here pretty soon.
Tim, okay, yeah, I got a couple questions based on kind of your answer there about Cade Peterzak. First, I'm just curious, how common is as a policy like Oklahoma's, where like, hey, if you commit, there's no visits? Because that's definitely different than what we've seen here at Nebraska, where Coach Rule actively encourages guys to explore their options even after they're committed, and like doesn't really seem to have a problem with it at all. Like, is that Oklahoma rule a common practice these days? Because I'm not sure I've heard of that before.
It's a common practice at certain schools like that. Oklahoma's pretty much just stems from what Venables saw Dabo do at Clemson. Those two are obviously notorious for kind of handling recruiting a little differently. So it does pretty much just stem from that. But Oklahoma kind of does this thing where it's like, you got to be all in to commit to us type, like that's just kind of the way they view it. Not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think I necessarily disagree with it, but in this day and age, like, you have to understand to recruit certain kids, you got to put up with, a little bit of that. Hey, this kid's going to explore a little bit. Like, there are going to be other options out there for him. Like, and so it may keep them away from certain recruitments, but it does also at the same time, like, knowing what I know about that class, knowing what I know about the program, they get the type of kids they want, like the guys that truly do commit there are the guys they want because of that policy. Same with Clemson. And obviously, it's hurt Clemson a little bit because Clemson refuses to play the NIL game while Oklahoma does. And so you're seeing that's kind of like why these two paths are kind of going differently. Oklahoma's trending down. Oklahoma's trending up. Clemson's trending down. But I mean, beyond that, I think a lot of schools have it unspoken, like certain kids within your recruiting class, like, hey, if you're lower on our commit list and we're considering dropping you anyway, and then you go make visits elsewhere, that's not going to go over super well. Like, I know that's a case at a lot of different schools where they won't outright say it, but you see a kid make a visit, and then a couple of weeks later they're like, hey, I'm decommitting, and then you ask around, and school's like, no, yeah, that it wasn't a him decision, it was an us decision. Like, that happens sometimes.
And Tim, my other question there is, so Cade Peterzak, what type of player, if he does end up going to Nebraska, like what type of player would Nebraska be getting there? Because I know he's listed as a D lineman, but you mentioned Raiola is active as part of his recruiting. Is this the guy they're kind of looking at maybe being able to play either way? Is he strictly a defensive lineman? Like, what are your thoughts on him as an actual player?
Yeah. Oh, I misspoke. So Raiola was for Cantwell, but here was
gotcha.
Knighton.
Okay.
But yes. But this has been Knighton. No. He does play both ways. But Nebraska's kind of solely looked at him as a defensive lineman, and it's not hard to see why on film. But yeah, he's just there's some rawness there. Obviously, playing against North Dakota competition, playing where he plays at. There's some natural, like, hey, he's going to need some technique development. He's going to need some just like rein him in a little bit, because I say that to say he plays with an aggression you can't coach. You watch his film, and this is the guy, he explodes off the line. That first step explosion is another thing that it's rare to find at that size, and it's not something you can really develop. That's just something you inherit and you take and mold into like a defensive line, like a high level defensive lineman. He's got a really impressive first step. Good striking power just off the line, plays with good leverage for his size, which again, for a guy that has limited, somewhat limited like coaching up there in North Dakota, to maintain that leverage is a difficult thing. And so the fact that he's got it pretty consistently is pretty impressive. So he does a good job with that, explodes off the line. And then, yeah, like just closes with like that intention to punish. Like you watch him, like he's always trying to finish plays, whether that's like, I want to be the one on top of the quarterback here. I want to be the one on top of the ball carrier here. I'm the one that's diving on the loose ball. Like he wants to finish plays. He's got an unrelenting motor. You watch this film, I think it's a couple minutes into it, you see him like 30, 40 yards downfield chasing down a ball carrier. Like it's not normal for a defensive lineman. He's impressive, man. It fits the vision of what Terrence Knighton's trying to build with this D line. Like the two commits they have so far are Malcolm Simpson and Tyson Terry. Both those guys can kind of play all over the line. You can add some weight to them. They can move inside, trim them down a little bit. They can play even like Jack potentially, or for sure defensive end. And then you look at Cade, and he very much fits into that. Like would probably start his career out at defensive end. Could even slim down and be a Jack if they wanted like a true pass rush presence Jack. But also has the frame to add, I think he's closer to 250, 260 than is listed 240 right now. but he can get up close to 300 plus pounds and hold it pretty well. Like just looking at his frame right now.
I think everything you just said about Peter Zach is just straight up red meat. Picked in a ball carrier 40 yards downfield. What? Sounds like my kind of guy. Going back to Donovan Raiola, as fans and on our podcast, we were lucky to have Tony Finotti on a few months ago, and we were talking about Raiola and trying to establish that poly pipeline. So when you bring in guys like Taumua, Brian Tapu, Houston, Kahania Torres, are there any other future poly targets that you're aware of that they're trying to get?
Yeah, there's a few. They're really trying to establish themselves in Hawaii. They offered his name is Tamaine Purcell. He's a 2026 tight end out of Kamehameha. So they're after him. Ace Amina is a 2026 or 2028 quarterback at Bishop Gorman. He came in camp this summer, earned an offer. That's one down the line. 2027 quarterback Fury and Ferreira at Mater Dei out in California. That's another one. They're really trying to establish themselves out in the West Coast with and yeah, like you said, like those poly pipelines. They're really trying to strengthen. As far as this cycle, it's not that many left really out there, if any. But yeah, looking ahead to 26 and 27, I think you're going to see a bigger presence from them out in Utah, out in California, out in Hawaii. Just trying to build that pipeline, like you said. I think there's a his name's slipping me, but there's a safety at Jackson Toloa. He's a 2026 safety at Salt Lake City West, same school that Brian Tapu's from. He's a really fun player to watch. Like you watch, that's a 6'2", 6'3" safety, like really rangy. Like you watch his tape and you're like, man, this is probably what Kyle Hamilton looked like in high school. Like just a big rangy safety, covers a lot of ground. And he's physical. He's a lot of fun to watch.
We're talking with Tim Verghese of Inside Nebraska. Tim, we've talked a lot of offensive line recruiting here in the segment so far. Like, have you heard from recruits? Because I know you talk to these guys as much as you can. Like, what about Donnie Raiola kind of resonates with these guys? Because a lot of what we see from him is pretty, kind of reserved, doesn't really say a lot, but obviously there's something about this guy that is getting Nebraska into some conversations, whether it's, David Sanders Jr., who I know they're hoping comes and visits next to kind of hope and get another shot at him. We talked about Jackson Cantwell. We talked about all these other guys that have already committed or signed with Nebraska. Grant Bricks being kind of the most high profile one last year. Like, have you heard like a common thread about Raiola that makes him so kind of compelling to these guys?
Yeah, for them specifically, it's the what you get, the on-field Raiola and then the off-the-field Raiola. Like that's the big thing for them that really resonates with them is, we saw it in some of the open practices we were at. He's fired up on the field. Like he'll get on you. He'll like, he's really about it. Like he's really locked in those lines. But for guys that are like, I want to be coached like a guy like that on the field because I know outside of the field, he's got my back. I can go to him for anything. I can really connect with him. They really appreciate his teaching style. Like, again, like Nebraska teaches O-line a little differently than most programs. Not in a bad way or necessarily a good way necessarily, but the common thing I hear from recruits is like, yeah, it's a little different, but Donovan does a really good job. Coach Raiola does a really good job of explaining it to us and laying it out for us in a way that we can understand, and the transition isn't too hard, and we understand kind of where he's coming from and why they do it the way they do there. Like, guys don't leave Nebraska being like, they do it differently, it's weird. They leave Nebraska being like, they do it differently, but I get it. Like, and that's a common thing. Like, that's not something like 1-2 recruits I've heard. Like, that's like every O-line recruit I've been like, hey, Nebraska coaches O-line differently. Like, how does that work for you? And, or how do you kind of, how do you feel about it? And they're like, yeah, Donovan makes it easy for us. And, like he does a really good job of like kind of laying out like what the expectations are, why it'd be different here. And again, like he breaks down the fundamentals with these guys, and O-line at their core, especially the high level, like the high achieving performing ones, they want to be yelled at. They want like, that tough love coaching, on the field, and they just want a community off the field. And Raiola's done a really good job of like building that trust with himself and his players, but also building that culture where the players are like one family unit.
And sticking with Raiola for a little bit, I'll just say, as a common fan, you see him come over from the Bears, and the question is, he was just like a assistant to the assistant kind of guy, and we were skeptical, and it's like, he only came here because they wanted to get his nephew on board and all that. And you look at the way he's been recruiting, and it just on the field, it looks like the O-line has been making improvements. I just got to say, as a fan myself, it's just so refreshing to see him really like break through in this role. So
yeah, it's been cool to see him kind of start to kind of flourish and like you were saying too. I think the narrative when he first got hired, and you think about the timing of when he got hired too, like kind of everyone kind of knew at that point, it's like, oh man, like this is kind of do or die for Scott Frost. It's like, this is the O-line hire. Like, are we sure? And it's worked out where he's the only staffer that was retained from that staff, or one of the few that was for sure the only on-field one that was retained from that staff. And beyond that, like just the way he's kind of found his groove on the recruiting side of things. It's not something he's done, but he's done a really good job of like finding the type of guys he wants, the type of guys Nebraska has. Like Briggs is a big one for last cycle, but beyond him, like Gibson Pyle came in the spring and did better than people expected. Like that's a guy that could factor into that like offensive guard rotation pretty early, and that staff is starting to kind of fall in love with Gibson or they really likes what they have in Gibson. Landon Davidson just arrived on campus. That's another guy that like bit of a sleeper, but give him some time to kind of learn everything. And he's got the frame already. Like he can contribute on the inside too. Like they get guys that beyond those top end, like elite talent, like Bricks and, the guys that are after this cycle, like they're finding guys like even Tapu, like that's a hell of a find. Like that's a guy with limited offers, limited tape. Like you didn't need to take a chance there, but you took a chance there. And, this is a guy that with 2 years of development could be like an elite tackle. Like there's elite movement skills in that frame.
Tim, we appreciate the time as always. Super good stuff this morning, and we will talk to you again next week.
Yes, sir. Of course, y'all have a good weekend.
Thanks, Tim.
You too. That's Tim Verghese from Inside Nebraska. Great stuff there from Tim. I'm just sitting here living the pipe dream of David Sanders Jr., Jackson Cantwell, both on campus. And he said something about Jackson Cantwell. The two-sport athlete thing, watch out for that.
I heard shot put, and I'm like, there it is.
That's a great equalizer for guys that care about two sports and are good at two sports. That is something like if you offer that to them and other people aren't, like your chances go through the roof. I just went from top 14, whatever, to, okay, this might be a real thing.
Get them on campus, baby.
Let's do it. Coming up next, we've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're halfway through the show. AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's Jared Hall from the No Block, No Rock podcast. I'm Ravi Lulla from, Hurrdat Sports Radio. And we're brought to you by our friends at the Team Jack Foundation. Make sure you get to teamjackfoundation.org to support everything they're trying to do, which is pretty simple. But as we like to say, it's simple. It's not easy. They're trying to find better treatments and one day a cure for childhood brain cancer. And teamjackfoundation.org is where you can get involved, whether it's signing up to volunteer, whether it's donating directly on the page, or seeing their upcoming events that you can get involved with. teamjackfoundation.org has you covered. Jared, I wanted to get back to Iowa here for a second.
Okay.
We were talking to Scott Dochterman at 7:45. If you missed it, make sure you check out the podcast wherever you get them. Apple, Spotify, same Spotify where One Last Breath by Creed has 335 million listens. And of course, you can go back and rewind on the YouTube as well. But somebody asked in the chat, and it was a little bit ago, so I forget who it was. I apologize. But They asked if with the Lester hire as the offensive coordinator, we heard Scott Dochterman talk about how it's new terminology. It's not like previous where Ferentz was really had his hands in the cookie jar quite a bit, and or his finger in the pie, whatever analogy you want to use there.
Analogy.
What's that?
I like the pie analogy.
Yeah, he's it seems like he's allowing the offensive coordinator to do his job. Are we still going to scapegoat Kirk Ferentz if the offense doesn't look any better? Are we going to blame it on Tim Lester? Like how do you think this goes if the offense doesn't look any better?
There is like a part of me that says the buck stops with Kirk.
Sure.
Right? So if it doesn't go correctly, if things look reminiscent to last year, you're going to have a lot of people that say, well, Kirk, you're the one that made the hire to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So you're the head guy. So, of course, the blame's going to lie with you. But on the other hand, if you're Tim Lester, my God, dude, the bar is low. So if you can't make – did you know where Deacon Hill transferred to, don't you?
Yeah, it's like a D2 school in Utah, isn't it?
Utah Tech.
Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad.
If you can't – this is for Tim Lester. If you can't make this work, and I guess our definition of work would be kind of a discussion, but can you be top 100? I mean, is it possible, Tim Lester, with Cade McNamara? And you would think a good offensive line, because that's usually what they're known for.
Yeah.
Can you be in the top 100 for goodness sake?
I haven't really thought of it in terms of rankings because, it's an interesting question though, because I think like if Iowa can get into the top 2/3 of the country, what does that put you at? Like 85?
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Because there's like 130 teams, so it'd be 85-ish, right? Being in the top 85 in the country, that's not a low bar, or that's not a high bar. That's a pretty low bar, right? Yeah. So top 2/3 in the country, this team without a doubt wins 10 games. Like there's not even, they might win 11. The only one you're losing if they're a top 2/3 offense, I think, is Ohio State.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That is first of all, it's an incredibly achievable milestone. And maybe that's why it's an appealing job to Tim Lester, where he's like, hey, I just have to not trip over myself and I can get this team to a college football playoff. Now, I was surprised to hear Scott say it's a playoff or bust year for Iowa, because I just have never been under the impression that that's ever the expectation for Iowa. And maybe that's me being a hater. And which I don't think I am, because I've been very pro Iowa in my predictions for this year. And I think they absolutely, like if they get to 10 wins, they're going to make the playoff in all likelihood, right? But, and that's what I'm predicting for them to do. But for them to say it's a playoff or bust year for fan expectations, like if you're Iowa, is that something you can even, like, I don't know. That sounded crazy to me when he said it.
Hey, they've had a nice Rose Bowl with Brad Banks once.
I loved Brad Banks. He was I thought he should have won the Heisman that year. I think it was over Carson Palmer. I think that was the Carson Palmer year.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, you throw out that 85 number. There's a lot of people out there who will say like, well, Iowa's defense and special teams are elite. So just imagine if their offense was competent.
Yeah.
Like here's where I've always kind of stood with this, and hopefully I can articulate it well, is even if their offense is just competent, how much of a jump realistically can we expect in the win column? I mean, they're already winning 10 games.
Yeah.
So there is a part of me, Ravi, that's like, yeah, your offense did suck for a long time and bottom of the barrel. And so you go ahead and you fire your son which you probably should have. But at the same time, I mean, you were winning. You were winning. And so it's like, how much more can you actually win? I just felt like, I don't want to say they're getting greedy, but you're winning 10 games. And something was working. Not the offense, but there just seemed to be something that worked. And so when you go ahead and you fire Brian, it's like, okay, well, what do you guys expect in the win column? Are you expecting 11 now? Like, are we winning one more game? I don't know. It's hard to kind of articulate, but you're already winning double-digit games.
So let me ask you this, because it's a fair question, right? But could you look at it, because this is how, we don't need to like re-legislate the Bo Pelini era at all, but can you make the argument for Iowa that because of how bad the offense has been, you're not giving yourself any margin for error for your defense to need, like this year, the defense is going to be fine, right? Like they barring anything catastrophic, like they've got a ton of returners, they've got NFL talent on there. The defense is going to be really, really good again. But there are, the way Iowa recruits, there's going to be a little bit of an ebb and flow of like, hey, like, yeah, this year it's a top 5 defense. Next year, maybe it's a top 20 defense. If you're a top 20 defense with last year's offense instead of the best defense with last year's offense, you're only winning like 7 games. So maybe they're just trying to increase that margin of error a little bit. And let's be clear, they are an 11-win team last year with an even somewhat functional offense. Now, that's only one more game, but that one more game can make the difference between, hey, we're in the bottom part of the 12-team playoff versus maybe we get a first-round bye. Or, you know what I mean? So, like, that does matter. Like, even if it is just one game, the one game does matter. And if you're in that situation, all of a sudden it goes from, you know, because we always kind of laugh. It's like, yeah, I was going to win 10 games and then just get boat raced by whoever they play in the Big Ten championship or in the college football playoff or whatever, right?
It's evidence happening.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just like, hey, we'd like to try and get there and not get boat raced. Like, maybe that's all it is.
No, that's fair. And, gosh, dude, despite the crappy offenses, they are still, and it pains me to say, please believe me, I do not want to say that. They are tight end you. They still manage to eat these freaking guys in a test tube. Like you got Luke Lachey that's there right now, and you would think that he's probably going to be a all-conference player in some capacity.
Yeah.
Here's what I need. I just need LeVar Woods to go anywhere else, please. I'm sick of this freaking guy. Like, just like yesterday, they got a 5-star commitment kicker. I'm like, can this guy just find another job? Mm-hmm. Is he going to be the next head coach of Iowa? I don't know. But I'm sick of LeVar Woods. I'm sick of it.
So as we are about to head to break here and bring on Kyle Byers, your No Block, No Rock podcast cohort and my Hurrdat Sports co-worker, I will say if they got to like 85-ish, just try to do some quick looks here. Last year, that would have put them at about 24 points per game-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood, which would have given them like a +9 on their point differential, which gets you squarely in the college football playoff from the like research I've done. So like I get it. If they can get to like a very mediocre spot, they might be okay.
Yeah, I know. I hate it.
Coming up next, we're going to talk to Kyle Byers. He hosts the No Block, No Rock podcast with our guy Jared. He also is incredible at what he does at Hurrdat Sports as well. We'll chat with Kyle coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube as we wrap up hour number 2. We are joined now by Kyle Byers from the No Block, No Rock podcast, also from our very own Hurrdat Sports. Kyle, what's going on?
What's happening, fellas? Long live Creed.
That's right, Kyle. Also, my guy Jared, if you could hop back in the stream so I could see what's happening, that would be terrific.
Yes, sir. I'm getting there, man. This literally happened on Monday. I think it was like literally the same time.
Yeah.
The Hurrdat Sports Bar Wi-Fi crapped out. So I'm going to get on here. I promise you.
Okay, good. Kyle.
Wi-Fi or any sort of technology. I'm just going to tell you now.
Why do you say that? Come on now.
Well, I got to give it to Shane on the whole production of Hurrdat Sports Radio, because I do it for No Block, No Rock, and pressing buttons and running all that stuff while the show is occurring and trying to talk in the show, it's like impossible. So kudos to Shane.
Dude, you're a freaking maestro on the ones and twos.
On, Shane.
You're a maestro.
Well, and I gotta say, this is a I know Shane makes it look easy, but what we're doing today is not an easy task to pull off with me and Champagne and Jared in studio and, bringing the guests on and everything. So for real, shout out to Shane, because this is a whole thing that's being pulled off this morning, and we could not do it without our guy Shaner.
Why the is Shane walking in there?
You should see it, Ravi. Like, whenever we go off air, Shane is just straight up berating me, like, you could have done this better. What are you doing?
He does have an anger problem, so he does like to yell at people. So no, Shane is killing it. We appreciate it. I appreciate him being able to pull this off, so I can have some confidence to, just traverse the Midwest and be in Champaign to do a show. But Kyle, we won't just ignore you while you're on the phone with us as we have been for the first minute here. But
so KB, you are the Steven Spielberg of Hurrdat Sports. Actually, just Hurrdat in general. And I want to ask you, what project did they have you working on? What project are you slaving over right now? Just all these extra hours. What do they got you on?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I don't know that I would call myself the Spielberg of Hurrdat, but I think right now we've got some big stuff coming up just with working with like local colleges. UNO, I think, is one of those, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to or at liberty to say kind of what we're doing for them, but got some big projects coming up with them, and then obviously the Pinnacle Bank Championship is coming up, so it'll be all hands on deck for the video squad here at Hurrdat Sports. Just kind of putting some stuff together for them.
So Kyle, I gotta say the project that you just came off of was the Baylor Shireman documentary with him getting drafted, which, if you haven't seen it, was absolutely phenomenal. Just kind of tell us about that experience. I know it came together super fast, but you basically just became that guy's shadow for a couple weeks in order to get this thing done when he wasn't out doing workouts for NBA teams. Like, just kind of walk us through that experience and like maybe kind of your favorite part of that, whether it's just spending the time with Baylor or, I mean, I've never been in the same room as somebody that was getting drafted before. Like, that's a crazy thing just in and of itself.
Yeah, man. Like you said, becoming Baylor, that came together super quick. Like the meeting that I was pulled into was kind of like, hey man, we want to do this documentary thing with Baylor Shireman, and he starts like workouts, and we're going to start following him tomorrow. So like, you're the guy. I said, okay. So yeah, it was like 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that, where we just kind of followed him around, going to get his tux fitted for his press conference for when he finally made it to whatever team he was going to get drafted by. Going to some of his workouts with his strength and conditioning coach there at Creighton, and the shooting coach, which is Mitch Ballack, like everybody knows him. And really just following him around, getting to know his family, who trusted us in the process of, inviting us into their home and giving us like old family tapes that we could convert to digital copies, and really just like allowing us to tell Baylor's story from a small town like farm kid and now first rounder in the NBA draft. But I think like my favorite part of all of it was just kind of like everybody sees the showman out on the court, and behind the scenes, like riding in Baylor's truck out to Aurora, Nebraska, there's a lot more to Baylor Shireman and obviously like his family and what's valuable to him. And kind of seeing all the work that's gone from that small town kid to the first rounder in the NBA draft. And like you said, being allowed into the room and getting to see him get drafted and his family's reaction and being able to capture that and put something together was ultimately like one of the coolest things that I've done to date as a professional videographer.
So Kyle, I got to ask you, I know we had a conversation as this thing was kind of going through, and you were like, man, Boston loves him, but I don't think they're going to bring him out for a workout because they don't think he's going to be there at 30. And then we have draft night play out. Like, how much indigestion did you have as like the late 20s picks are going through and you're like, oh God, what's happening here? Or did you feel like, oh man, Boston loves him at 30. I feel okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I was pretty privy to conversations between Baylor and his agent, and it certainly seemed like Boston was really interested in him, and they didn't think that he'd be around for 30. So, like, you know, but all these teams, there were 4 or 5 teams that all said, we really love Baylor. We really want him. We really, you know, and then it starts getting down to like the 23rd pick, the 24th, and so on and so forth. And I have a microphone on Baylor at the draft party, and I'm listening to him and Coach Mack, like, kind of talk back and forth. And it was kind of like, oh boy, didn't go here, didn't go here, didn't go here. And you're starting to see guys from like his combine team getting drafted before him. And they're certainly started to turn into panic started basically. And for myself as well, because I had this whole thing like due the next day. So this was going to extend it. And how does the narrative of the documentary, like, how does that change? And then out of nowhere, like 30th pick is coming up. You can kind of hear it on the TVs at the bar. And it was like, okay, it's go time. Mac hits him, right? And he gets his phone call, and he's like, hey, man, they want you. And so we all kind of rushed into the room. And then sure enough, it was funny. They didn't actually call Baylor. They let it play out on the TV, and then they called. So it was a real nail biter, like right till the end.
So a project like that, KB, really humanizes a player, right? All we know as fans is the dude on the court or the dude on the field, without really taking into consideration all of the personal, sacrifices and the work that they do in the dark, as they say. And so I'll just ask you, KB, whenever Mike and I go off about J-Skers, or we, talk about our hatred for Creighton athletics, are you just kind of like, but Baylor Sharman's cool? Like, I don't want to say anything.
Yeah,
Or actually, maybe let me ask you, like, your general thoughts, like, whenever we go off about, I guess, players in general, just like, figure it out, be better, right? Like, what are you thinking when we say stuff like that?
Well, I'm in a pretty cool spot where it's like I kind of get to know the people at Nebraska. I get to kind of see the players up close, and I get to know the players at Creighton. And so, like, there's the J-Sker haters and all this other stuff that goes on. But at the end of the day, it's just people, right? So for me, I kind of take like the fan aspect out of it. I love Nebraska. I've always loved Nebraska, but I've also gotten to know people on like a personal level at Creighton. And so, like, I kind of take the fan aspect out of all of that. And so, yeah, when you guys are like going off and stuff, it's kind of like, well, you know what? I know at both organizations the people are great, and I kind of know them on a more personal level, and I get to see them up close. So, yeah, I think it's just kind of like, for me, it's just I know the people, and everybody's cool. So,
right,
Kyle, it kind of sounds like you're the Damon Benning in this situation when I'm going nuts about Trev Alberts. Like I feel like that's the dynamic here. Jared is me being irrational and a weirdo, and then you're Damon, who's like, well, I mean, he's not a bad guy.
Yeah, where it goes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, hold on. That's a bad example
because Trev is the devil.
Even Kyle Byers, who's probably, and I'm not just buttering you up. I'm not glazing you, Kyle. You're probably in the top 5 of people that are just straight up nice, good people. But when it comes to Trev Alberts, even you would go off, right?
I did get my heart broken a little bit. Yeah. I'll admit to that. Yeah.
Hey, let me just ask you real quick. Before we record next Monday or whatever we do, Horns down. What are your thoughts, man? Can we get some horns down? Like, just in the chat, I know you're on the phone, but just do it in your car or wherever you're at, Kyle. Horns down,
Yeah,
baby.
I wish you guys could see me. I'm running around in my office right now at the Hurrdat Sports headquarters. Just horns down, horns down.
Hit 'em.
I'll always live for that.
And guess what? We're not getting penalized by the SEC, baby. Horns down all day.
All you snowflakes out there.
All day.
Kyle, we appreciate the time. Also, I have to say, I know I've told it to you personally, but just so you get your flowers in front of everybody here on the show. Incredible work, not just on the Baylor doc, but on all the stuff you do. Can't wait to see what you've got cooking up next, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
See you, KB.
That's Kyle Byers. He's the videographer at Hurrdat Sports and hosts the No Block, No Rock podcast with, my guy Jared here, Mike, Connor. There's a whole crew over there, and they're good guys for the most part. A little crazy, but they're good guys. Speaking of a little crazy but good guys, we got Mike Sautter coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here we go. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We are joined now by Mike Sautter.
There
we got a little echo.
Hey. Oh.
Mike, did you mute your? There we go.
Good job, Mike.
We got.
I can't hear you though.
You can't hear me?
Okay. Are we good now?
I can hear you.
Sure.
Okay.
I still got an echo though.
Okay. Not sure what to do about that. So
he looks good.
Mike, how are you?
I always look good, Jared. Look at me.
Look at that bald head.
I'm not. No comment.
Mike, how was North Dakota?
Let me tell you, the drive back from North Dakota was not fun.
What happened?
Well, I got home about 3 a.m., so that wasn't fun.
Not a great start. No. How far is that from Fargo?
Like 6. Omaha, about 6 hours.
Okay, so that's a little trek.
Yeah, and if it at one point it sounded like it was raining, but it wasn't raining. It was just all the bugs hitting my windshield.
Oh,
that's not fun at all.
I got 2 car washes yesterday.
Bug killer.
You doubled up.
Well, yeah, I went through the actual real car wash, and then I went to like the handheld one and had to use the sprayer thing, and then the brush. I had to get all the bugs off. I was working on it.
Must have been pretty thick, man. Jeez.
It was. You ever been to North Dakota?
I don't think I have, Sautter.
South Dakota.
I've been to Snowdon.
Driving.
Yeah.
In the middle of darkness, with not a lot around. There seems to be a lot of bugs over there. Or in that. So yeah.
Is it just
I think I have been to North Dakota. I think there's a Trinity College up there that we played when I was coaching at Grace.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it would make sense that you would probably randomly. There's like random colleges all over North Dakota and South Dakota. So, no, but the actual trip was good. I had a great time, enjoyed myself. I was by myself, but I had fun. So it was good. People that may not know this about me, I have this little place in my heart for wrestling, amateur wrestling, not wrestling, the fake stuff on TV, the actual real stuff. So I have this little kind of in my, yeah.
So not a Hogan guy.
What'd you say?
So you're not a Hulk Hogan guy.
Well, not after last night. Anyway.
I said it in particular.
It's weird. No, but the actual tournament. So Nebraska. We're talking about the. I was in Fargo Monday through Wednesday, or Sunday through Wednesday, and for the USA Wrestling National Championships. Basically, freestyle was the 2 different. There's freestyle and Greco. And freestyle was the first part of the week, and Greco actually starts today So I went to, I just went for the freestyle part because Greco is a little weird for me. Like, I'm never gonna just pick someone up and like throw them. So I don't know. Doesn't take a lot of like speed and skill in my opinion. So anyway, Nebraska ended up with 7 All-Americans, which is, placed 1 through 8. And mind you, it's in the Fargo Dome. There are 30. If you've ever been to state wrestling, there's 10 mats. At the CHI Health Center, they have 10 mats, which seems overwhelming. Okay, times that by 2, and that's what this event is. Also, over 3,000 wrestlers from all 50 states. So you had 30 mats and a lot going on at one time. So yeah, it's a lot.
20 mats or 30 mats?
30.
Okay, because you said 10, then you said
times
that by 2. So my math is just.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. Sorry.
Making sure. I'm just making sure.
Let me tell you, I woke up this morning and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really tired. And yesterday, I was not very tired, which is amazing because I slept about 3 hours because I went to football camp yesterday in Plattsmouth after sleeping on the couch for about 3 hours. So, but today it like hit me. So I need to get that second cup of coffee today because I got stuff to do. Anyway, the wrestling thing was great. Cade Ziola finished runner-up in the juniors division, which is the older kids. Think like AAU basketball. It'd be like the 17U division, right? And then he finished runner-up and had a tough one in the finals. But it was cool to see him kind of run through some people, and he got ran through in the finals, frankly. So he needed to, learn from it and move on. But it was really good. There was the future I think is pretty bright for high school wrestling in Nebraska, and I don't think there's ever been 7 freestyle All-Americans, to be honest. I think someone told me that, and that number's correct. So yeah, it seems like a lot.
So you mentioned Cade. Who are some of the other? You mentioned and the 7 All-Americans. Who are some of the other guys from Nebraska that had good weeks that you want to talk about?
Omaha Bryant's Abdi Unle got 3rd. Last year, I think he got runner-up last year. I'm just going off memory. I was there last year, and I want to say he got runner-up. So Abdi is he's just an awesome kid. He goes to Bryan, represents Bryan extremely well. He got 3rd, and then one guy. So I'm not saying he's gonna beat Tyson Terry at all. But Preston Wagner from Fremont ended up 5th, and he's a heavyweight. Now he's younger, right? He's sophomore, but I think he could provide at least some resistance to Tyson Terry this coming season, unlike last year where there was just nobody that was close. So I'm not going to go out on that limb at all because I don't think Tyson's going to lose in his high school career, which is phenomenal. But at least there's like a next heavyweight coming after Tyson's done for people to kind of talk about. And he's a big, strong kid, and he did an awesome job. And Cruiser Dominguez is the guy. He got 5th. He hasn't been to Creighton Prep yet. I mean, like, he's going to be a freshman, and he got 5th. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. So, yeah, those are a couple guys. Guy from Brock Goebel from Syracuse got 5th, I believe. I am missing a couple that I can't remember. But, yeah.
I just want to ask you, Sautter, do you think you could take any of these kids right now at your age?
No.
No?
Maybe the little guys. Like, because, I mean, maybe the, like 100 and 106. Abdi is 113. He would smoke me because he's just super quick. You know, the little guys I could take. I don't know if you know this, Jared, but I did win a wrestling match versus a grown human. What was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think you talked about this.
There's video.
Yeah, there's proof. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
What brought that
Just
on?
because I'm bald and have a little gray hair doesn't. Hey, Jared, if you want to throw the gauntlet down, you let me know when it's time to go.
Listen,
okay?
There's literally nobody on planet Earth that I would mess with. You're the last one I would ever want to mess with.
With arms wide open.
With arms wide open.
Oh my God, Shane. Stop.
Mike, do you want to go to Creed with me tomorrow?
I'm not. Is that tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Can I say hell? Hell no. There's no way. The last place I would rather be.
Whoa. Why the heck?
Yeah. There's a lot of places I would rather be than that. And one of them is like, I don't know, think of a bad place to be.
Adventureland with your kids.
That's not that bad.
That sounds horrible.
You don't like kids. So
what did Scott Stapp do to you?
It's weird. The whole Creed affinity thing is very weird.
Come on, Ravi.
So, Mike, let me ask you this. Getting back to wrestling here, because Jared's question got me thinking a little bit. So I'm like 245 pounds. Okay. Mm-hmm. How small would someone have to be before just my sheer size would be a problem for them?
Oh, probably
like a good wrestler, like a high school wrestler. I'm not just like a rando.
Probably like 57 would probably be. Then you're talking like guys are built a little.
I'm in some trouble.
Smaller. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I have the comments. Dave said watching paint dry on a fence sounds better than a Creed concert. Thank you. Exactly. I would rather do that.
Where's Will when we need him? Come on, Will. We need you to defend the
we
Creed
stopped talking
fandom.
about Creed for a second, and then he left.
Hey, I will say this as far as Creed is concerned. I would rather watch Iowa beat Wisconsin 6-0 with 2 field goals than go to Creed in negative 20-degree weather.
You're here for like the Iowa South Dakota State like 6-4 game. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, and even if that was in the dead of winter in Brookings, South Dakota, with the wind blowing and snowing, I would rather do that.
You'd rather drive through the void of North Dakota with bugs hitting your car the whole way than
and get home at 3 a.m. Yes, 100%, no question.
Jeez, I feel like Ravi needs to. Where's your pride, Ravi? Like you got to defend your boys.
I mean, listen, you can't teach some people. Yeah, you can't teach some people taste, and that's fine. Like it's okay.
He's a too far gone. When you have bad taste, Sautter, it's all right.
No,
it's not your fault.
I can't help it. They're not like us. Drake.
We're talking with Mike Sautter, our guy from Hurrdat Sports. Mike, you mentioned you were starting to head out to some football camps. So you're at Platteview, Plattsmouth.
Well, Platteview was there yesterday. Plattsmouth. It's actually first time I've been there. Plattsmouth was yesterday, kind of morning. It's a Midland Jamboree. So the Midland University coaches run the camp. Mm-hmm. So it was Syracuse, Platteview, Plattsmouth was hosting. Elkhorn Mount Michael was there. By the way, Chad Kelsey's kid, good player.
Pretty good.
Like Mount Michael, like he's got to grow a little bit, but like he kind of plays just like Chad. It's like built kind of like him, wears number 57 like him, so that's kind of guy. Who else was there? Platteview was there. Got to see Ryman Zebert, in pads. Lincoln Lutheran was there, and Wahoo. Wahoo, Class C1. They're as far up on they are very much so the favorite in Class C1. Wahoo is. They're athletic, and Noah Bodorski, who again, good wrestler, good athlete, track guy too. He, last year, sophomore year, running back, he did extremely well for Wahoo. Yesterday, I wish I was like shooting video because dude came up to tackle him like out by the numbers, right? He lowered his shoulder, and I'm telling you, the kid landed flat on his back about 3 yards past where the collision happened. Like the kid, and the whole place just went, oh, like, yeah.
You got knocked up.
Yeah, and then the very next play, he takes one up the middle. Another like safety kid comes up trying to tackle him. Boom, sticks him again, and the kid just boom falls back and he runs for another like 5 yards. So he's fully cleared and healthy, and he's also gonna be a two-way guy for Wahoo. He's a really good athlete, and their team is going to be really, really good this year. They return a lot. Braylon Iverson's a good linebacker. Their linebacker core is going to be pretty salty for C1. Frankly, yesterday I was talking to a couple people that were there, people that have coached in Class A before, and we were kind of like, okay, they would be this Class A team, this Class A team, this Class A team. We just kind of kept going up down the list in a one-game scenario, right? Like depth is kind of a thing. But we felt pretty strongly that they would definitely be in the conversation in Class B even, and be able to beat, clearly the kind of bottom of Class A. A lot of teams can beat them. But it's just as you we kind of got to about, I think we got to about 15 where they would be. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Sautter, what's their competition look like in C1 this year? Like, even if they run through it, like who's the next tier?
Oh, they have, Ashland and them. It's a big rivalry anyway. And Ashland's so well coached. And Derek Tonjes, their quarterback, will be fine. Aurora is going to be good. Columbus Lakeview is going to be pretty good. Saw them at my 7-on-7 event, and Coach Frenzen's a great coach, and Ethan Piper's coaching the offensive line at Lakeview this year. So that's something new. He's teaching physics and coaching the offensive line. So yeah, Ethan Piper is a high school physics teacher. He's smarter than me. I know that.
I love that. Ethan Piper's great.
Yeah, he's an awesome kid.
Not as cool as his mom, but still pretty cool.
And Central City is another team in C1 to kind of keep an eye on. So, but Wahoo just returns a lot, has all this depth and stuff like that. Boone Central won last year in C1, and they moved down to C2 this year. So, and Boone Central kind of is reloading. They're not rebuilding. And Boone Central has a nice player. Thomas Roberts is a really nice player for Boone Central. That is their, is kind of do it all lineman for them.
So I do just want to ask you, it feels like Nebraska high school football has been churning out like tight ends like it's nobody's business. Like Chase Lofton, for instance, not committing to Nebraska, but it's okay. Like, is it overstated in that I just feel like the tight end position in the state is very deep, and I don't know if it's because of like schemes that Nebraska high school teams are doing, or just these guys are just naturally 6'5", and that's just part of their genetics. But what are you seeing in terms of just this state and the tight end position?
That's funny that you asked that question. I think it's okay to talk about this, but for the Hail Varsity Magazine yearbook season preview, I talked to Thomas Fedoni for it, and I talked to him about positionless football. So we're seeing a lot of those type of players, right? The positionless guys, and also the tight end position is what's changed. You have Carter Nelson, right, is another guy, and there's more coming. Isaac Jensen at Millard South, love him. Like, I think he's a stud. Like, that dude catches. I don't know how many of their 7-on-7 games at Millard South in June, a lot of them. That dude catches everything. So he's another one that's coming. And then you do have your Loftons and whatnot. I think part of it maybe is guys, if you look at high school basketball, there isn't a lot of size. And I think maybe those guys are just kind of moving their way to football now. From a few years ago, this all sort of started when Bill Callahan took over, and it changed the way high school football in Nebraska was played. Because for years it was Millard North style of football, right? Like we're gonna run an option and stuff because you mirror kind of what what Nebraska, the University of Nebraska, is doing. So I think that has changed it. Another piece of this too, and you have to give a lot of credit to it, is 7-on-7. The evolution of it in Nebraska, it has dramatically changed recruiting for kids in Nebraska. No question. Like there's 2 7-on-7 teams. One is Warren Academy, and then Elite's the other one, and they have absolutely, without question, helped change that kind of narrative for those type of players. Like your skill guys, you're seeing a lot more skill guys, and that's because of the emergence of more 7-on-7 in Nebraska than anything else. And that's happened in the last 5-6 years that has kind of flipped on its head a little bit.
So Sautter, if I'm understanding you correctly, so with the skill development that 7-on-7 allows for, it takes guys that either would have been undersized basketball players or would have been, offensive linemen that needed to put 40, 50 pounds on, or that would have been defensive linemen maybe, and allowed them to become kind of these really attractive prospects as tight ends. Like, is that kind of what you're talking about?
A little bit of that, or sometimes those guys would be like the tackle on a team or something, or a defensive tackle or like two-way lineman, because they're bigger, right? Mm-hmm. They're the big, we just got to put the biggest guy. It's kind of like in basketball teams that play a 2-3 zone, and you just stick the guy in the middle of the post because he's the tallest player, right? Even though he's like your point guard, right? Yeah. So it's like the same situation. So think of that, right? Like it's changed the game so much, and you're a little bit right, Ravi. Like it's because of 7-on-7 that has changed the way people do it. And also, frankly, like it's just better. It's more recruiting opportunity for coaches to see kids, right? And they can go and watch some of these 7-on-7 events, and that's how you see players. It's kind of like AAU basketball when there's the basketball live periods. Think of it the same way. Like it's the same kind of vein in thinking. So a basketball live period is the last one is actually happening this weekend for AAU basketball. So it's the same deal, and Division I coaches will be out and about and all over, and Peach Jams this weekend and all that. So it's very much so the parallel between AAU basketball and 7-on-7 is there. We just haven't had it for decades like we've had AAU basketball.
Sautter, real quick, like 30 seconds left here. When are you switching from your summer mode to full-fledged, like, hey, high school football, let's go mode?
Yeah, it's starting probably early next week. I need to start mapping out like what practices I'm gonna go to, because I go to a lot of practices. I think last year was, what did I say? I don't know. I went to 30 total high school practices, and 18 of them were football last year. So, and I don't just show up for like the last 5 minutes to get a little film hit and then pop that on the TV or something. I'm there for the entire practice. So, that's coming.
All right. Football season is coming. Mike Sautter from Hurrdat Sports. We appreciate it, Mike. We will talk to you again next week.
See ya.
See you, Mike.
Coming up next, hopefully we will have DB if he's available right here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's Jared Hall from the No Block, No Rock podcast. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we are brought to you by our friends at Union Omaha. Make sure you get to unionomaha.com to get your tickets for their upcoming matches. That next one is a week from tomorrow, July 27th, against Chattanooga at 7 p.m. at Warner Park. Make sure you get out there for that. You can get tickets at unionomaha.com. You can also get some merch there and find out everything else that's going on with the club. That's unionomaha.com. We are efforting DB. He may still be coaching a little bit, so we may not be able to catch up with him this morning. But if he is able to join us, we'll toss him in here whenever we get him. But Jared, we've had a lot of guests this morning, a lot of ground that they've covered. And one of the things, I think I brought this up earlier this week, but I'm sitting here and I'm wondering about the pipe dream, about the fever dream, maybe even, of a Jackson Cantwell, David Sanders Jr. combo at the dear old Nebraska U. Have you allowed yourself to think about this possibility?
Why do you always do this to me?
What do you mean?
You always do the whole, hey, Dylan Raiola, Heisman, have you let your mind go to that place? I mean, you already know my answer to this.
We've got Damon, by the way.
It's no. I can't let it get to that place yet.
Let's.
Here's where I'm sorry. I know DB's on the line. My bottom line, Ravi, right now is just get to 6. Get to the Charmin Ultra Soft Bowl. Everything else will fall into place. Okay, let's just get there.
Let's get to our guy Damon Benning. DB, what's up, buddy?
How we doing?
Hey, man.
Oh, we're just we're living that hotel room life right now, hanging out in Champaign, Illinois. How's practice this morning?
Practice was good. I took a recruiting visit to Champaign. I thought, no disrespect to Fremont, but I was getting Fremont vibes.
Hold on. Wait a second. Risking all of our Fremont listeners out there, what does that mean exactly?
That's where I felt like I was, because I got a couple good buddies that went to high school there. So I had spent some time out there in my high school days. So when I went on my recruiting visit, it made me have you ever been to Champaign?
I have not personally.
Yeah, it made me think of Fremont. That's no shot.
Yeah, no shot.
Yeah, no shot. I spent more time out in what's the little itty bitty place by Fremont? It's only like 7 miles. I spent more times in Ames, which is practically a suburb of Fremont, than I have maybe in Omaha. I'm just kidding, but I've been out that way quite a bit.
DB, I mean, you've been here since your recruiting trip, right? For calling games, right?
Yeah.
It's bad. Like it's an okay little college town. It's not bad.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. But you got to remember when in '92, and I think I was pretty hard headed. Like I wanted to play base. There was just a lot of things that I was looking for that Champaign wasn't it. And you got to remember at that time, that stadium and that it was not very good, right? Those facilities, they've come a long, long way. And I mean, full disclosure, there weren't a ton of people that looked like me there. And now keep in mind, this is a guy that just said he spent time in Fremont. So,
what, short?
It felt like it was going to be a long time to spend 5 years or 4 years or however long I was going to be in school, 7 for some.
So how did you get to the place where you're like, yeah, let's take a visit to Champaign? Like, how did Illinois get into that position with you?
I was just trying to go to places that were relatively close that played baseball and football. Like that was kind of the thing for me. I liked baseball a lot more than I liked football in high school. So that was kind of the thing for me that I was leaning towards.
So yeah, I don't get like terribly different vibes than like Lincoln now, like with on campus. Like it just feels like a college campus too. And I'm staying at a hotel like on campus, and I've been on campus. Like it just feels like, oh, it's just another college. Like it just sort of feels like Lincoln or some other generic college campus to me.
Yeah, I think kind of the turnaround started with Lovey. It's not popular to say that sometimes for Illinois fans because usually all he gets credit for is recruiting. But I think Lovey kind of wanted that feel, that kind of homey feel in the rally around what he would call Chicago's team. And then, Bielema has picked up on it too. So, I mean, I get it. Evolution, and wasn't a terrible city. It just, I was looking for a little more. So why not just wind up in Lincoln, which is like the most eclectic collection of student athletes ever, right? I mean, that mega metropolis known as Lincoln.
Hey, so I
got jokes today. It started with a good text that I was gonna send Ravi because apparently my own kid thinks Ravi's a bigger fan than I am because apparently now he's convinced he's the only one that believed in him. So,
dang.
Couldn't be further from the truth. So this morning it was 22 mile an hour, again, fastest on the team this week. Bench 225 for 8, cleaned 225. My hip's still bugging me a little bit. I'm still rehabbing it, but I feel great. Just wanted to let you know I'm working. So there you go, Ravi. There's your weekly lousy update.
I mean, listen, man, I was banging that drum early. I think week 1, week 2, I'm like, hey, best player in the state, no questions asked. I've been telling you he's gonna play. I think me and Coach Rule have some things in common. How we feel about Caleb Benning.
Hey, you gonna drop another mic on me? Hey, I just want you to know, like, it's cool this week being away from me and being able to take shots from far away, but. At some point, like Monday, we're going to be back together again.
Yeah, and we're going to be real close on Tuesday through Thursday as we go to Indy together.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. You don't understand how that's keeping me up at night.
Ravi, is there anything about you, like, on a trip that makes you unique? Like, is there something that you have to do? Just like, I don't know, is there like a special freaking food that you eat or something? Like, what is there something about you when you go traveling?
No, not really. I try to. I'm very conscious of as a diabetic, I have to pee a lot, and so I kind of dry myself out for a couple days. Like I'll kind of dehydrate myself for a couple days to make sure I don't have to stop more than like a normal person would. Yesterday we made it to Champaign, one stop.
Bladder. Awesome.
Hey, we made it to Champaign in one stop yesterday, DB. It was one stop. That's not bad for 7 hours.
I'm not near as eccentric. I'm paranoid. The one thing I won't do is sleep where people can watch me. So I don't sleep on planes. I don't sleep in cars. You're not going to catch me dribbling with, or you can put like a marshmallow in my mouth or anything like that. Not happening.
DB, I'm not like 15. I'm not going to prank you while you're asleep.
Put his hand in a glass of water. That whole thing.
I could see Ravi doing something like that.
I believe in the sanctity of sleep. I would never do that.
Yeah.
I'm a nice person. People, DB, you make me out to be this bully. I'm a very nice person.
Listen, see, there you go. I don't make you anything. Like, you have these telltale signs, and I just talk about them.
I feel like I'm a very nice person. I don't know what these signs are that you're talking about.
How'd you guys feel about SEC Media Days? Can you believe how much one conference can champion like every team in the conference? Like, if there's one thing that conference can do, it can have you believing the 16th place team could still win a national championship.
There's something about the South, man. They just stick together no matter what.
It's incredible. It's like it is the greatest advertising machine that I've seen in the last 25 years next to Apple.
It's it says the guy with an Android. Come on, man.
Of all people.
I'm consistent. I didn't buy into the hype.
Yeah, but sometimes the hype is real. Come on, man.
It is.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you seen me try to set up my email? I think I'm just afraid of technology.
Is your email still working? How are we doing this week?
It's good. I have 573. I'm gonna go one at a time.
Let's go. I think I'm knock on wood. I think I may have permanently fixed it, DB.
Yeah. I just got a little update from old Keith Mann and what's going on with. So I'm up and running when I'm getting the media updates. Like, how about that?
Ooh. See, just another nice thing that your co-host Ravi Lulla does for you, always being nice to Damon Benning.
21st century. Woo.
Yeah.
Don't we love it? Don't we love it? Welcome.
What I learned.
DB, we love you. We got to go talk to Verse, who's, never a bully or anything. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited you'll be back next week.
Hey, tell Uncle Crabapple I give him my best.
All right, will do, buddy. We'll talk to you later. We're wrapping up the show here on a Friday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. That is Jared Hall from the No Block, No Rock podcast. I'm Ravi Lulla from the Pillar Exterior Stage, remote location at Champaign, Illinois.
Of a generic painting. I like it.
Yeah, I don't really know what we got going on here. Just some generic hotel art, which as was pointed out in the chat was the dead giveaway that I was at a hotel. Somebody thought I was in a hallway. I'm not in a hallway. I am in the room. Just obviously not at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill with Jared there. We are efforting our guy Matty Vrzal, but in the meantime, I do want to thank Jared, Elijah, and Anna for filling in this week. Great week of shows. Really appreciate their time. And especially shout out to Jared here for accommodating this ridiculous setup that we have this morning. I think this is only the third time I've done a remote show. The first was a blizzard that I couldn't get out of my neighborhood over the winter. The second was my neighborhood was flooded. I don't remember a couple months back when there was this like torrential downpour, flash flooding. I tried to get out of my neighborhood and it sort of felt like my car was starting to float as I went through an intersection. I was like, nope, we're not going to do this today.
We have Matt, by the way.
So the only way that you miss work is if there's just a utter catastrophe. So you're pretty dedicated, man. You're pretty dependable.
I do my best. You know who else is dependable is our guy, Matt Vrzal, former Husker, owner of Paisans Pizzeria, joining us now. Verz, what's up, buddy?
No, man, what you guys doing?
Talking ball?
Just chilling in Champaign, Illinois, Verz.
Really?
Yes, really.
Yeah, Champaign, Illinois, and it's not game week. This is not a drill.
What are you doing up there?
My buddy's dad passed. I came out to be here with him for the funeral.
Oh, my condolences.
I appreciate that. He was Steve was a good dude. But yeah, so we're doing a little split show here. You ever been to Champaign, Verz?
I have been there once. It's been a hot minute, but yeah, I was there.
What were your thoughts? Because DB said it gave him Fremont vibes.
I mean, college town. It's not. I mean, it's not. I'll never say anything bad about anywhere. It's, you go there, you experience it. If you like it, you go back. If you don't, you never go back. I've never been back.
As people from the great state of Nebraska, I think we should have that kind of mentality for other places. You know what I mean? Because we're self-aware, right? This isn't the most exciting place to live all the time. Self-awareness is important.
People think you got to go and love everywhere you go. I mean, you don't. You just go, and if it hits you right, you stay, and if it doesn't, you're like, all right, see ya.
Ravi, you staying?
No, but I will be back here in a week because they're dropping me off after media days. They're dropping me off in Champaign, so I'll spend another day with my buddy next week, and then I'll meet the wife up in Chicago for our anniversary. So I think I do love Chicago. One of my best friends lives in Chicago, and the wife and I like going up, taking little trips there for try and get out there once a summer. I know you love Chicago, Verz.
It's the best.
Go Cubs, go!
Do you have any restaurant recommendations while we're out there? We're always looking for new ones.
You know, Mia Francesca is always good, but people that go to Chicago, like sometimes just got to go explore. Like some of the best food I've had there is just at a bar that some of them I didn't even know had a kitchen. And you just go, because chances are if it's a smaller bar, it's owned by a family. They're in there. There's an aunt and an uncle and a mom and a dad and kids, and they're cooking, and it's amazing. I mean, I have people ask that all the time. I'll always say Mia because we have a blast every time we go there. But just walk around on the north side of town, or the central part of town. Don't walk around the south side of town, and just go explore.
Be aware.
See something, and just stop in. Yeah, it's awesome.
That is good advice. You don't want to just be wandering around the south side of town for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I really rarely feel uncomfortable anywhere, but I feel uncomfortable in the south side.
Hey, Verz, before I ask, oh, sorry, go on.
Nope, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I was telling one of my buddies that I'm talking to you, and he says, tell Verz I love him. He's never met you, but he still loves you. He's not weird at all.
Yeah.
So I don't expect you to have any response to that. I just want to tell you. When you look at this offensive line this year, they're older, but then you do have this newcomer coming in, Mazuka, and I feel like people need to get that right. It is Mazuka. It's not Mazkua or anything like that. Mazuka. When you look at this guy coming in, what do you expect out of him? He's kind of an unknown a little bit. He might start, but what are you expecting out of Micah Mazuka this year?
With the young guys, it's you never know till the real bright lights come on. Okay, I don't know. I would be shocked if they started him, but I would be super happy if you see something that's a sneaky part of evolution of the depth of a program, which is all of a sudden the kid is just in the game, right? You don't, and you're never going to see a lineman substitution. You're watching other things, but you have you're going to want to start your old guys because they've been there, they've been seasoned. They haven't been particularly awesome, but I think now they have a different mindset. So I would like to see with that age if now they play differently. Okay. Then third, fourth series of the game, all of a sudden you got some new people in the game that are working with the old guys almost as a stabilizing force. Milt and Dan were great at it. We played Texas Tech, I think the fourth series of the game. They're like, you're in. And I looked around, I was like, me? They're like, yeah. I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So that way, it's a sign that they trust you to go in the game when it's still not decided. And then that to me is one of the easiest ways to gauge how confident they feel in the depth of a position. And it isn't by force, and it isn't by need. Somebody's got hurt, and you went in. It's just like, oh, it's okay. Here's your rotation. You're going in these series, and then the young guy goes in, and he can kind of get his feet wet without it being a super chaotic, or you have to perform perfectly. He can go in and make a mistake with the old guys around him. They'll help him, and then he just evolves and grows from there, and you get more and more playing time.
Verz, how important is that where you are able to get guys playing time in, I don't want to say low leverage situations because I'm not sure that those exist for a team like Nebraska yet, but in situations where you're not forced to put them in and they kind of know this is you have an injury or something like that. How important is it to be able to get them some reps before you get to that spot?
It's invaluable because you never know how a person will handle. I think even if you talk back in the day to Tommy, right? Tommy, when he went into the game, would put probably some undue pressure on himself. I'm saying, hey, I'm just playing a game. I got to go play this game, and I got to figure it out. That's it. But, you know, when he was sharing reps with Mike Grant, I'm sure there were series where he went in and was like, man, I just put too much pressure on myself. That was stupid. So it alleviates a lot of strain that you can put. Because football isn't a game you can play that way. Football, you have to go in and be, like, aware twofold. You can get knocked out, or you can get somebody else knocked out. So I love it. As Nebraska's roster grows and it continues to evolve, I can't stress enough to people how important it is that you just keep sliding these younger guys into games when everybody seems to be like, oh, I didn't see he was even in the game. Like that's a big thing, because if they go in there and they're calm and they perform well, and then the level of play doesn't change, now you've got a guy that's like, okay, we can now put in a full-blown every 2 series you're going to rotate in, because now we can trust you. So that's why I like it, and that's why I think it's high-level coaching, but it's also high-level trust in the player, and you got to put them in. You can't put them in the fourth quarter when you're up 45. You don't know. But when you put them in, you're maybe up 7 or maybe you're down 3. Now you see how they respond, but in a controlled environment.
Matt Vrzal, great stuff as always. Verz, we appreciate the time, and we will talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Tell your buddy. Appreciate the nice gesture. If I ever meet him, I'll make sure to shake his hand.
Great stuff, Verz. Good guy as always. Jared, thank you so much for all you did this week, for helping me out and allowing me to come out here to Champaign and making this work. Special shout out to Shane and Sasha as well, doing the Lord's work to make sure this thing got off without a problem. Jared,
Ravi.
Jared, plug the podcast real quick before we go.
The No Block, No Rock podcast. We go live every Monday. You can find us on all social media platforms at NBNR Podcast. Thank you, Ravi. You're amazing. You are a grinder, and I love you.
I appreciate it, Jared. And don't forget, NBNR, part of the Hurrdat Sports family. We'll talk to you guys next week.